That's the sentence that plays in my mind over and over. His silence, her words, and that moment when I realized motherhood doesn't end when your child grows up. It just gets quieter, lonelier, and harder to defend. It happened on a Sunday, the kind of Sunday where the air feels still, like the world itself is holding its breath. I had cooked all morning, chicken biryani, mint chutney, and kheer for dessert because my son, Ayan, and his wife, Hania, were coming for lunch. It had been weeks since I'd seen them. When I heard their car pull up outside, my heart leapt. I wiped my hands on my apron and went to the door, smiling before I even saw them. But when I opened it, something felt different. Ayan looked tired, not the kind of tired a night's sleep could fix. This was a heaviness in his eyes, a kind of distance that unsettled me. And Hania, she barely looked at me. Her lips curved into a polite smile, but her eyes were cold. Still, I told myself it was fine. People have bad days. Marriages take adjusting. Maybe she was just stressed. Come in, I said, stepping aside. The food's ready. You must be hungry. She walked past me first, her perfume sharp and expensive, too strong for such a small living room. She glanced around, her gaze pausing on the old sofa I'd kept since Ayan was in college. You still have this, she said softly, almost under her breath. But I heard it. Yes, I replied. It's comfortable. She just hummed, not looking at me again. Ayan touched my shoulder gently. Amy, the house smells amazing, he said with that familiar warmth that used to light up a room. But his tone had hesitation, as if saying something kind to me might somehow upset his wife. I brushed it off. Mothers do that, don't we? We ignore the sting, so the room stays peaceful. At the dining table, I watched them eat, or tried to. Hania barely touched her plate, scrolling through her phone between bites. Ayan kept glancing at her, waiting for her approval of the food, of me, of everything. So, I asked gently, how's work, Beta? Before he could answer, Hania said without looking up, he's been really busy. I told him not to take on that new project, but he never listens. I smiled thinly. He's always been hardworking. Even as a boy, Sometimes being hardworking isn't the same as being smart, she interrupted. He doesn't know how to rest. It's unhealthy. Ayan chuckled softly, almost nervously. Hania, it's fine. Amy knows I'm like this. But I saw the way she looked at him, a small frown, a silent warning. I lowered my eyes to my plate. The rice was cooling. The kheer was starting to form a skin. That's how the rest of lunch went. Me asking gentle questions, her giving curt answers, and Ayan trying to keep the peace between us, though I could tell where his loyalty was leaning now. After they left that afternoon, the house felt emptier than usual. I cleared the plates, wiped the counters, and sat at the dining table staring at the chair where my son had sat. There was a faint impression in the cushion, still warm. I told myself not to cry. He was grown. He had a wife. Life changes. But somewhere deep inside, I could feel it, the beginning of a distance that no mother ever wants to name. Ayan had always been my gentle child. Even when his father passed away, and I thought the world would break beneath my feet, it was Ayan who held my hand and said, Amy, I'll take care of you. He was 12. He used to bring me tea after school, study beside me in the evenings while I sewed clothes to make ends meet. When he got his first job, he handed me his entire first salary, not a single rupee kept for himself. We weren't rich, but we were happy. There was laughter in this house, and music, and sometimes even quiet dancing when the lights went out and the world felt safe. Then he met Hania. She came from a well-off family, the kind that vacations abroad and hires people to iron their clothes. I had nothing against that. Love doesn't check bank accounts. But from the first meeting, I sensed something guarded in her, a kind of pride that didn't leave room for others. She was polite, yes, but never warm. When I served her tea that day, she held the cup delicately, like she was afraid it might stain her hands. Still, I unloved her. And what mother denies her son happiness? So I smiled through the wedding preparations, blessed them both, and prayed every night that she would come to love me as a mother, not an inconvenience. But as weeks turned into months, my visits became less frequent. Her messages were always polite excuses. We're busy. He's tired. Next week, maybe. And when they did come, the air between us felt fragile, like a glass that could crack with one wrong word. I noticed how Ayan no longer called me daily, how his voice, once filled with laughter, became quiet, careful. And every time I tried to talk to him alone, she would appear from somewhere, asking about tea, or dinner plans, or some irrelevant thing that pulled him away from me. I didn't want to think badly of her, but the truth was, I was beginning to feel erased. One evening, about a month after that tense lunch, I called Ayan. The phone rang several times before he answered. Amy, I'm a bit busy right now, he said, his voice hushed. Oh, Beta, I just wanted to hear your voice, I said softly. Are you okay? You sound tired. I'm fine. Just a long day. And then, in the background, I heard Hania's voice, sharp, annoyed. You're still talking to her? Can we please have one evening without interruptions? My hand froze on the phone. He whispered something to her, muffled words, appeasing ones, and then said, Amy, I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Of course, I managed to say, forcing a smile he couldn't see. Take care. When the line disconnected, I sat in silence. There it was, the first real crack. The first time I heard with my own ears how she spoke of me, and the first time he didn't defend me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering where I'd gone wrong. Was I too much in his life? Too little? Had I expected him to love me the same way he did when he was a boy? Or maybe this was just how life works. Sons grow up, mothers fade into memory, and new homes demand new loyalties. But still, one truth echoed in my heart. No matter how old he got, I was still his mother. And no one, not even his wife, should have the power to make me feel small in his eyes. The next time I saw them was a month later. Hania's idea, surprisingly. instantly. She had texted, "We'll come by this Sunday for tea." I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I'd love that. But something inside me whispered, "Don't get your hopes up." That Sunday, I spent hours preparing. Not because I wanted to impress her, but because I missed my son. I baked his favorite semolina cake, the one I used to pack in his lunchbox when he was little. I made cardamom tea just the way he liked, extra strong, less sugar. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart leapt again. I wiped my hands on my dupatta, straightened my corda, and opened the door. They stood there, perfect, polished. Hania in a cream dress, her hair pinned up, gold watch gleaming. Ayan beside her, tired as ever, but smiling faintly. "Assalamu alaikum," I said warmly. "Wa alaikum assalam," Ayan murmured, leaning down to kiss my forehead. My heart swelled, but Hania just nodded, her smile polite and distant. Inside, I served the tea. She took a sip and said softly, "It's very strong." I smiled gently. "Ayan likes it that way." She set the cup down. "He's trying to cut down on caffeine." I chuckled lightly. "Since when?" "Since we got the new espresso machine," she said flatly. The words were small, harmless even, but the tone behind them carried something sharper. Possession, correction, control. Ayan shifted in his seat. "It's fine, Hania. I'll drink it." She turned to him, smiling sweetly. "I'm just saying it's not healthy. You get headaches." I sat there, quietly watching the small exchange that said so much more than it seemed. In my home, in my presence, she still found ways to correct him, and by extension me. I wasn't sure if it was insecurity or power. Maybe both. We made small talk after that. Work, traffic, the new mall she loved. She showed me pictures from her phone. Shiny restaurants, dinner tables with friends I didn't know, vacations I was never told about. Ayan barely spoke. I wanted to ask him about his work, about how he was really doing, but every time I turned to him, she would cut in. "Oh, he's doing fine. Oh, that project's already done. Oh, he doesn't like to talk about work at home." Every sentence a wall, every smile a warning. When they left, she hugged me for the first time. A short, perfunctory hug that smelled like perfume and tension. "It was lovely seeing you, Amy," she said, her voice sugar sweet. And I, fool that I was, believed her, if only for a moment. But later that evening, I found out why she'd really come. Ayan called me the next day. His voice was awkward, hesitant. "Amy, Hania mentioned that you still have some of my old things in the storage room." "Yes, Beta. Your books, your medals, some clothes from school." "Right." She was just saying maybe it's time to clear some space. "You don't really need to keep all that, do you?" I froze. "Those are memories," Ayan. "I know. Amy, Hania thinks it might help if you declutter a bit. Move on." "Move on from what?" I asked softly. There was silence. Then he said, "You know what I mean." But I didn't. Or maybe I did, and it hurt too much to admit. Move on from him. From the little boy who used to leave his school bag on the sofa, who would fall asleep on my lap while I hummed to him. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "If she wants the boxes gone, tell her I'll bring them myself." He hesitated. "No, Amy, that's not necessary." "It's fine," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "I'll handle it." After the call ended, I sat quietly for a long time. The sound of the clock ticking seemed louder than usual. That's when it hit me. She wasn't just creating distance. She was rewriting our story, erasing the traces of who he was before her. And my son, my own flesh and blood, was letting her. A week later, I packed the boxes. Each item felt like a piece of my heart. His old cricket bat, his school certificates, a torn comic book with his name scribbled in blue ink. I traced my fingers over the handwriting, his small, uneven letters. How could anyone call these things clutter? When I carried the boxes to their car, Hania was already there waiting. "Oh, you didn't have to, Amy," she said, her tone overly sweet. "We could have sent someone." "It's fine," I said quietly. She opened the trunk, looking down at the boxes like they were junk. "We'll sort through it. Maybe donate some things." Donate. The word hit me harder than I expected. Ayan stood by silently, his hands in his pockets. Our eyes met for just a second, and in that look, I saw everything I'd been afraid of. Guilt, confusion, and silence. Always silence. For weeks after that, I didn't hear from him. No calls, no visits, just the echo of my own thoughts in this quiet house. Then one afternoon, my neighbor, Mrs. Kamal, came over for tea. She was the chatty kind, the kind who always knew what everyone was doing. "I saw your son and his wife at the market last week," she said between sips. "Such a handsome couple." But she was quite sharp with him. Poor boy couldn't even pick the right mangoes without her scolding him. I smiled faintly, pretending it didn't sting. People like to talk, I told myself that. But when she left, I sat alone again and thought about what she'd said. Sharp with him, just like that phone call, just like lunch, just like every moment since she'd entered our lives. It wasn't just me she disrespected. It was him too. But she was clever. She did it when no one could call it cruelty. Just correction, concern, a tone that could be mistaken for care. And Ayan, he was too kind, too conflict averse to fight it. He thought patience would fix it. But sometimes patience just lets people walk all over your heart until it stops fighting back. The final straw came a few days later. I had gone to the tailor's shop to pick up a corda I'd ordered for Eid. While waiting, I overheard two women talking near the counter. Hania was saying her mother-in-law keeps calling her, asking to visit. Poor thing, she's so stressed. Says the woman can't let go of her son. I froze. They didn't notice me, or maybe they did and didn't care. But that moment, I can't even describe what it did to me. To know she was talking about me, painting me as some clingy, meddlesome mother who couldn't give her son space. When all I ever did was love him, that was when I knew. It wasn't misunderstanding. It wasn't a bad start. It was deliberate. She wanted to push me out, and he, my son, was letting her. But I wasn't going to lose him quietly. Not this time. I didn't sleep that night. The words I overheard at the detailers kept circling my mind like vultures. Can't let go of her son. Was that really how she saw me? How she spoke of me? I sat at my kitchen table long after midnight, the same table where I'd once watched Ayan study, laugh, and share stories from his day. The walls still held his echoes. The house still smelled faintly of him, sandalwood and ink. That's when I made up my mind. If I was going to lose him, I wanted to know the truth of why. The next morning, I called him. My hands were trembling. Ayan, beta, I said softly, can I come by this evening? I have something for you. He hesitated before replying. Sure, Amy. Around 6. Hania's voice floated faintly in the background, sharp as ever. What is it now? I didn't need to hear more. Yes, 6 is fine, I said, hanging up quickly before she could take the phone. Then I sat down and began to write. Not a text, not a message, a letter. It felt old-fashioned, maybe even dramatic, but I needed to say things that couldn't be interrupted or twisted. Words that came straight from a mother's heart. The letter wasn't long, but it carried the weight of everything I'd held inside. My dear son, I know life changes. People grow, and love takes new forms. But motherhood doesn't stop with time. It only quiets itself, waiting for the doorbell that never rings. I have loved you through every silence, every missed call, every polite smile that told me I'd become an obligation. If my presence burdens your new life, I will step aside, but I need to know that you made that choice, not someone else for you. Love isn't about control, beta, but neither is it about erasure. And that's what I've begun to feel, erased. I raised you to speak up for what's right, even when your voice trembles. Do you still remember that? Your mother, Zahida. When I finished, I folded the letter neatly, sealed it in an envelope, and tied it with a thin golden ribbon, the kind he'd once used to wrap my Mother's Day gifts. Then I got ready to go. Their house was bigger than I remembered. Cold marble floors, perfect white curtains, no trace of warmth. It didn't smell like home. It smelled like air freshener and distance. Hania opened the door. She looked surprised. Oh, you came. Yes, I said calmly. Ayan said I could. She stepped aside, her smile tight. Of course. He's just finishing up some work. I walked in, my shoes silent on the polished floor. There were framed photos everywhere. Vacations, dinners, parties, but not one with me in it. Not one. When Ayan came out of his study, I could see relief in his eyes. Amy, he hugged me quickly, almost guiltily. You didn't have to come all the way. I smiled faintly. I wanted to. I brought you something. I handed him the envelope. He looked at it, confused. What's this? Just a letter, I said. Read it when you have time. Before he could say anything, Hania spoke from behind him. You could have just texted him, you know. We're both so busy these days. Her tone was casual, but her eyes, sharp as a blade. I turned to her and said quietly, some things are too important for text messages. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course. I could have left it there, but something in me broke open. Weeks of silence, humiliation, and heartache spilled into that room like water finding its crack. Hania, I said softly, may I ask you something? She raised an eyebrow. Sure. What did I ever do to you? Her expression faltered for a moment. I don't know what you mean. I continued, my voice trembling but steady. From the first day I met you, I tried to welcome you. I gave you my home, my love, my son. And yet every time I see you, you treat me like I'm in the way. Amy, please. Ayan started, but I lifted a hand. No, Ayan. Let her answer. Hania crossed her arms. You think I'm the problem, she said coldly. Maybe you just can't handle that he has a wife now. You're always calling, always interfering, always interfering. I echoed. I only ever wanted to know if he was happy. She scoffed. He is happy. Or at least he was, before you started guilt-tripping him with all your emotional drama. Something inside me shattered. I felt a sting in my eyes, but I refused to let the tears fall. Ayan stood frozen between us. His silence, once protective, now felt like betrayal. Hania, I said softly, I have never asked for anything from you. Not money, not time, not favors. Just respect. But even that seems too much. She smirked. Respect goes both ways, you know. And so does kindness, I replied. For a long moment, the three of us stood there in silence, the air heavy, thick with words we couldn't take back. Finally, I turned to my son. I'll go now. Read the letter when you're ready. He reached out. Amy, please. But I stepped back. No, Ayan. You don't need to say anything right now. Just read it. And then I left. When I reached home, I collapsed onto the sofa exhausted. The clock ticked loudly in the silence. I stared at the photo of Ayan on the shelf. His graduation day. His smile wide and bright. I whispered, where did that boy go? That night, I didn't eat. I didn't cry either. I just sat in that quiet house and waited, though I didn't know for what. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Then, sometime after 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ayan. Amy, I read your letter. I didn't know you felt this way. Can I come over tomorrow morning? I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I typed back, yes, beta. Come. Then I placed the phone down and finally let myself weep. Not from anger, not even from betrayal, but from the small, flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, I hadn't lost him completely. When he came the next morning, he looked different, like someone who hadn't slept. His eyes were red, his jaw tense. He hugged me tight, longer than usual. I didn't know, Amy, he whispered. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. I held him close, feeling the same way I did when he was a little boy afraid of thunder. You were caught between two hearts, beta. I understand. He pulled back, looking at me with guilt. I should have spoken up. I let things slide because I didn't want to upset her. But reading your letter, it hurt me to see how much I've hurt you. It's not too late, I said softly, but you have to find your voice again. He nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. I will. And that was when I realized the silence that had once broken me might now be breaking him too. The morning Ayan came back, it felt as though the sun itself had softened, like it too was waiting to see what would unfold. He sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where he once did his homework as a child, his hands wrapped around a cup of tea he wasn't drinking. "Amy," he began quietly, "Hania and I fought last night. After I read your letter, my chest tightened." "Fought?" He nodded, staring down at his tea. She saw the letter on my desk before I could put it away. She read it. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You didn't mean for her to?" "No," he said quickly. "But once she did, she got angry. Said you were trying to turn me against her, that you were manipulating me." "Manipulating you?" I repeated, disbelief creeping into my voice. He ran a hand through his hair, sighing deeply. "She said you make me feel guilty for living my own life. That every time I talk to you, I come back home sad, and that you play the victim." I felt something inside me sink. Is that what she truly believes? He didn't answer right away. When he finally looked at me, his eyes were full of guilt. I think she believes what she wants to believe. But hearing her say all that made me realize how far this has gone. I didn't stop her. I should have. I reached across the table and placed my hand on his. "You're my son. You're not meant to be caught between two fires." "But silence isn't peace," I yawned. "It's slow destruction." He nodded weakly, his voice trembling. "I know. That's why I came here. I don't want to lose either of you." "You might not have to lose anyone," I said gently. "But you can't keep pretending that this is fine." He looked up at me, searching for something in my face. Perhaps permission, perhaps courage. "What should I do, Emmy?" he asked, like he was 12 again and needed help with his school project. "Start with honesty," I said softly. "Not the kind that hurts, but the kind that sets things free." That evening, he went home early. He called me before he walked inside. His voice was steady, but I could hear the fear underneath it. "Emmy," he whispered, "pray for me." "I always do, Beta," I said, and I did, long after he hung up. He told me later how it happened. When he entered the house, Hania was in the living room, scrolling through her phone. The letter, my letter, sitting open on the coffee table. She looked up. "So, did your mother enjoy the drama she caused?" I sighed. "She didn't mean to cause drama, Hania. She was just hurting." "Hurting?" Hania scoffed. "She's always hurting, always the victim. I can't live like this," I yawned. "I'm not marrying both of you." He sat down across from her, his tone calm but firm. "You're not, but she's my mother. You can't ask me to stop being her son." "I'm not asking that," she said, standing abruptly. "I'm asking you to set boundaries. She calls, she visits, she clings. It's exhausting. She calls because I don't," he said quietly. "She visits because I never do." For the first time, she didn't have a ready retort. He continued, "You think she's manipulating me, but have you ever thought about what she's actually asking for? A little respect, a kind word. You don't have to love her, Hania, but you don't get to insult her either." She frowned, folding her arms. "You're taking her side." "I'm taking what's right," he said firmly. There was silence, the kind that fills every corner of a house when pride meets truth. Then she whispered, "You don't understand how it feels to be compared to her all the time." He blinked. "Compared? By who?" "Everyone," she said bitterly. "Your aunts, your cousins, even you sometimes. Amy makes the best biryani. Amy always knows what to say. Amy used to do this for me. Do you know how small that makes me feel?" Ayan sat back, realization dawning on his face. "So this was never about her being overbearing. It's about you feeling overshadowed." Tears welled in her eyes. "Maybe it is. Maybe I just wanted to feel like you're home, too." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he reached across and took her hand. "Hania," he said softly, "you are my home, but Amy is my foundation. If you can't accept both, everything we're building will collapse." She didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked toward the letter again, my words sitting quietly between them like a mirror neither wanted to look into. He stood up then. "I'm going to see her again tomorrow. And when you're ready, I'd like you to come too." When he told me this the next day, I sat very still, letting the words sink in. "She said she might come," he added. "I think she finally understood what I was trying to say." I smiled faintly. "Understanding takes time, Beta. Be patient, but not silent." He nodded. For the first time in months, I saw peace in his eyes. 3 days later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Hania was standing there alone. She looked different. No makeup this time, no practiced smile. Just quiet eyes and a nervous hand clutching her purse. "Assalamu alaikum, Ami," she said softly. "Wa alaikum assalam," I replied, stepping aside. "Come in." She hesitated, then walked in slowly. The silence was thick, but not hostile, just heavy with everything unsaid. I led her to the sofa. She sat, her hands trembling slightly. "I read your letter again," she began quietly. "Not to invade your privacy. I just wanted to understand." I nodded. "And did you?" She swallowed hard. "Yes, I think I did. You weren't trying to control him. You were just trying not to disappear." Her words broke something open in me. I took a deep breath. "I never wanted to compete with you, Hania. He's your husband, but he'll always be my child. That's not rivalry, it's nature." She looked up at me, tears glistening. "I know. I was just scared. Scared that I'd never measure up to the woman who raised him." I smiled sadly. "You don't need to. Just love him the way I did, with patience, not possession." A single tear slid down her cheek. She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for the things I said, for the way I made you feel." I reached for her hand. "And I'm sorry if my love ever felt like a cage." We sat there like that for a long moment. Two women, bound by the same man, divided by misunderstanding, finally meeting in truth. When Ayan arrived later and saw us sitting together, he looked stunned and then relieved. Hania smiled faintly at him. "Your mother makes very strong tea," she said, her tone light but warm. And for the first time, it wasn't an insult. He laughed softly, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in months. In that small, quiet kitchen, peace, fragile, tended tentative but real began to grow. But peace, as I would soon learn, always comes at a price. And not everyone outside that house was ready to let it stay. For a few weeks, everything was quiet. Not perfect, just quiet in that fragile, hopeful way that makes you tiptoe around happiness, afraid to scare it off. Ayan started visiting more often, sometimes bringing Hania along. She'd sit beside me in the kitchen as I cooked, watching quietly, asking about recipes. The first time she tried to make my biryani, it was too salty, but when she laughed about it instead of getting defensive, I knew something inside her had softened. People in our family noticed the change, too. A few relatives who had stopped inviting me, thanks to whispers and half-truths, started calling again. Ayan and Hania seem happier now, they'd say. And I just smile, not bothering to explain the storm that had passed to make that peace possible. But peace rarely goes unnoticed in a family where gossip thrives on chaos. It started with my sister-in-law, Farzana. She was never one to stay out of anyone's business. We'd grown up together, married into the same family, but she had always seen my simplicity as weakness. One afternoon, she called. Her voice was honey-sweet, but I could hear the sharpness underneath. So, she began. I heard Hania finally came around. What miracle did you perform? I smiled faintly. No miracle, just honesty. She laughed, a little too loudly. Honesty, that's new. Last I heard, you were the problem, always calling Ayan, making him choose between you two. Her words didn't sting like they once would have. We've all said things we regret, I said calmly. But Allah softens hearts in his own time. She didn't like that answer. Well, people talk, she said. They say Hania's only pretending to make peace. You better be careful. Some women can't stand sharing control. I chuckled softly. Then I suppose she and I are learning to share something bigger, love. That ended the call quickly. But gossip spreads faster than truth. Soon, small comments began surfacing at weddings, family dinners, even at the market. Zahida auntie finally tamed her daughter-in-law. Maybe Hania realized she can't win against a mother's manipulation. She's changed now, but who knows for how long. At first, I tried to ignore it, but words have a way of reaching where they're meant to hurt. One Sunday, Hania came to my house visibly upset. She threw her purse onto the sofa and said, "Your relatives are talking about me." I looked up from the stove. What happened? I ran into your cousin at the salon. She said everyone's saying I finally learned my lesson. I felt my heart drop. Oh no! She crossed her arms, her voice shaking with anger. I'm trying, Emmy. I'm really trying to be better. For him, for us. But these people keep acting like you and I are fighting some kind of war. I turned off the stove and walked over to her. People will always talk, Beta. That's their way of feeling important. You and I, we know the truth. That's enough. She blinked back tears. I just don't want Ayan to feel embarrassed. He won't, I said gently. He's proud of you. But that night, when I was alone again, I prayed for strength. Because I knew peace built on fragile understanding can easily crumble when the world starts poking at its cracks. A few days later, there was a family dinner, one of those obligatory gatherings no one truly enjoys, but it tends to keep the illusion of unity alive. We all sat around the long table. The usual faces, the usual whispers. Hania sat beside me, silent but graceful. Ayan held her hand under the table. I noticed something he hadn't done in months. Then, as if on cue, Farzana decided to perform her usual act. So Zahida, she said loudly, how does it feel having your son back after all that drama? The room went quiet. Even the clinking of spoons stopped. I looked at her and smiled. It feels peaceful, Farzana. You should try it sometime. A few people chuckled softly, but she wasn't done. And Hania, she said, turning to her, you're such a strong woman for forgiving everything that happened. I would have never tolerated that kind of interference from my mother-in-law. There it was, the jab disguised as praise. Before I could say anything, Hania surprised everyone. She smiled, calm, unshaken. You're right, Auntie. I wouldn't have tolerated interference either. But I realized Amy never interfered. She only waited for me to see her heart. Farzana blinked, thrown off. Well, still, it must have been difficult. Hania nodded gently. It was, but that's what family is, isn't it? Difficult, until you understand love isn't a competition. A stunned silence followed. Then Ayan added quietly, and sometimes people outside the family add more noise than the ones inside. Farzana's face flushed. She busied herself with her plate, and no one else dared to stir the pot after that. That night, after dinner, Hania and I walked to the car together. She exhaled, half laughing. I think your sister-in-law hates me more now. I smiled. Then you handled it perfectly. She looked at me, her expression soft. You know, Amy, I used to think you were judging me, but maybe you were just protecting what you love. I said quietly, and so were you. We just didn't know we were fighting the same fear. What fear? Losing him. Her eyes shimmered as she nodded slowly. Sometimes the simplest truths heal the deepest wounds. Weeks passed, and for the first time in a long while, laughter returned to my home. Ayan would drop by unannounced, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to have tea. Hania began calling me on her own. Small things at first. A recipe, a household question, a photo of the dinner she cooked. Then one evening, I received a message from her. Emmy, I found an old photo of Ayan in your box. He's wearing that little red sweater. Can I frame it for our living room? I smiled so wide it hurt. Of course, Beta. That would make me very happy. It wasn't just a message. It was a bridge, built quietly, humbly, across the chasm that once felt impossible to cross. One night, as I sat by the window sipping tea, Ayan called. His voice was lighter than I'd heard in years. Ammy, you'll be a grandmother soon. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My eyes filled instantly. Subhanallah, truly? He laughed softly. Truly. Hania wanted to tell tell you herself, but she's resting. We both thought you should be the first to know. I pressed the phone to my heart, whispering thanks through tears. All those nights of silence, the ache of being unseen, the quiet prayers, it all led to this moment. Life had come full circle, but it wasn't victory I felt. It was peace. Peace born not of winning, but of understanding. Of realizing that love, when patient, doesn't need to fight. It simply waits until it's recognized again. When I first tell my granddaughter, I felt something shift inside me. Her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I thought this is what all the pain was for. This peace, this second chance. Hania was lying on the hospital bed, tired but glowing in that way only new mothers do. Ayan sat beside her, his eyes filled with quiet pride. Amy, he said softly, we're naming her after you. I froze. After me? He nodded. Zahida. It means one who's content with what God gives. That's who you are. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just touched my heart and whispered, Alhamdulillah. Hania smiled at me, her voice still faint. You've been more of a mother to me than I've been a daughter to you. I want her to grow up knowing what real patience looks like. I sat beside her, tears sliding down silently. Then she'll grow up knowing how love can heal anything if we let it. Life after that wasn't perfect, but it was real. Hania would drop by with a baby every few days. Sometimes, I'd wake up to the sound of her voice in my kitchen, singing softly while she warmed milk. Other times, she'd hand me Zahida and say, Amy, she only sleeps in your arms. I think she already knows you're the calm one. We never mentioned the letter again. Not because we were pretending it didn't matter, but because it had already done its work. It didn't need to be a wound anymore. Ayan often said, you know, Amy, that letter changed me too. He told me one evening, as we sat on the veranda watching the sunset. When I read it, I realized I'd been trying so hard to keep peace by staying silent that I'd actually become part of the hurt. I looked at him, my heart soft with understanding. Silence can protect peace only for so long, Beta. After that, it starts protecting injustice. He nodded. I know. I'll never forget that. There was a day, a few months later, that tested everything we'd rebuilt. A distant relative, one who had always loved to meddle, visited and made a sly comment about how lucky Hania was to have me forgiving her after everything. For a second, I thought the air would tense again, the old wound reopened. But Hania laughed gently and said, oh no, Amy didn't forgive me. She just saw me before I saw myself. The woman blinked, confused. Hania looked at me then, her smile full of peace. It was in that moment I realized forgiveness isn't just about letting go. It's about teaching someone how to come home without shame. That night, after everyone had left, I sat by my window, my favorite spot, with a view of the old mango tree outside. The baby had just fallen asleep, her soft breathing filling the quiet. I thought back to that day in the kitchen, when Hania had insulted me and Ayan had stayed silent. How small I had felt, how invisible. And now, the same kitchen was filled with laughter, the same house alive again. It made me think about how quickly we judge our pain, how easily we call it unfair before it's had time to teach us what it came for. Maybe, I thought, love isn't about being right. Maybe it's about being ready to listen, to wait, to hurt, to heal. I had been both, the one who hurt and the one who healed. Sometimes I still see that version of myself, the one who stood at the sink with trembling hands, the one who couldn't understand why her son had chosen silence. I wish I could hold her and whisper, you'll understand soon. Don't harden your heart just yet. Because the truth is, the moment you stop loving, the story ends. But if you keep loving, no matter how quietly, it always finds a way to continue. A few months ago, Hania brought me a small wooden box. She said, I found this in Ayan's drawer. It was my letter, the one that had changed everything. Folded, worn at the edges, still carrying the faint scent of the paper I had cried over. I think it belongs to you, she said. I took it gently, but instead of keeping it, I handed it back. No, I said, it belongs to both of you now. Keep it somewhere safe for the day your daughter needs to read what love can survive. Now, every Friday evening, when Ayan, Hania, and little Zahida visit, we sit together in the same living room that once echoed with silence. The baby crawls across the carpet, tugging at her father's pant leg, while Hania scolds him for feeding her too many biscuits. And I just sit there, watching, feeling time wrap around me like a soft shawl. Everything that once felt broken is now quietly mended, with golden seams only visible to those who've lived through loss. People often say mothers never stop loving their children, but I've learned something deeper. Mothers never stop believing that love can find its way home, even when it gets lost in pride, even when it's tested by silence, even when it breaks, because sometimes silence isn't the end. Sometimes it's just the pause before the heart finally speaks. When I look back now, I don't remember the insults or the silence. I remember the day love started speaking again, not with words, but with forgiveness. If you've ever been hurt by someone you love, I hope you know this. Your voice matters, even when it trembles. Your patience matters, even when it feels unseen. And your love, if it's real, can outlast even the coldest silence. So tell me, if you were in my place, would you have written that letter? Or would you have stayed silent too? Let me know what your heart says in the comments below. And if my story touched you, don't forget to follow, share, and keep listening. Because sometimes the stories we share are the ones that remind us we're not alone.